Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the Bokeh Podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Holritz. Happy Monday to those of you that might be live streaming with us. It's good to have you here today. As usual, if you are live streaming with us, don't be shy. Comment, ask questions, join the conversation. It's certainly one of the benefits of this live stream is that you can take advantage of the opportunity to interact with myself and certainly our guest, who I'm going to introduce here in just a second. If you've got any questions about the podcast or the podcast schedule, you can follow us on Instagram at Bokeh Podcast, Bokeh Podcast, and keep up with the latest schedule there. And on that note, I actually want to go ahead and reintroduce, not a brand new guest, a returning guest on the Bokeh Podcast. Kelsey Christine is here with me. Kelsey, thank you for coming back to the show. It's a privilege.
Oh my gosh. Thank you, Nathan. I am so excited. It's been too long.
It has been a long time, and I'm trying to think. I should have looked this up before we got started. What episode did we do together?
Oh my gosh, I can't even remember. It was years ago. It was Britt and I, my old counterpart. I have since taken over Launch Your Daydream, so I'm excited to kind of have a fresh start here. You're my first podcast with this kind of new lens of Launch Your Daydream, so I'm excited to talk about it.
Which, by the way, I was thinking, even as I was getting ready for our show today, that brand name is so good. And maybe we can talk a little bit about it too as we talk about brand position here in just a second. I'm actually going to do a quick search right here and see if I can't find what episode so we can tell everybody.
Sure.
It was episode 220. Oh, that's crazy. Yeah, because this is... Well, we're coming up on 6:30, 6:40, something like that. So the last time that we hung out on the Bokeh Podcast was February 11th, 2019 is when we published that show, episode 220. So for anybody who didn't get to hear that show, that first episode with Kelsey, make sure that you look it up on all your favorite podcast players, episode 220, and you can kind of catch up a little bit. Kelsey, on that note, I want to just kind of give you an opportunity to reintroduce yourself to the audience here that are listening live, and then those, of course, that are going to listen after the fact. Give us like the 60-second spiel. Who's Kelsey Christine?
Okay, cool. Before I do that, I would love to just acknowledge that the day that we are recording this live is actually Juneteenth, which has finally become a federally recognized holiday. But I just kind of wanted to acknowledge that because although we have chosen to work today, it is an important day, and just wanted to acknowledge kind of our history of our country and how it still actually affects people today. So just wanted to make that note here.
I appreciate
but
that.
Yeah, of course. A little bit about me. So Launch Your Daydream is now we are doing Showit template customization for photographers. I have really found a very specific niche over the years. It's funny because I'm curious to know, back in the first episode with Britt on here, we were probably in such a different place. So as most businesses do, we have transformed over the years. So now I specialize in customizing Showit templates for photographers. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go. But yeah, and I'm based in Nashville. We're both Tennessee out here.
I know, and it is kind of weird. Like, we're only a couple hours away from each other. It's been so long since I've done a live, like an in-person interview. Usually I'm doing it remotely like this, but we are very close by. I appreciate you coming back on the show, and again, for those of you listening in, if you want a little bit more of an introduction, you can go back to episode 220. Before we come back to your brand position, because you're in the process of launching a new website as well, kind of a refresh of your brand. So we're going to touch on that. But there's an introductory question I've been asking our guests just to kind of get the show started. This whole show, Bokeh Podcasts, over the years has really been centered around enabling photographers to be able to create a business that's sustainable. And that sounds maybe a little stuffy a word. Really, it's just about flexibility and freedom as business owners, because I know from personal experience that we can have that. But I think a lot of times photographers get so caught up in the day-to-day busy work that it's easy to end up working 50, 60 hours a week, and at nighttime and in the middle of the night and first thing in the morning, and then not have the freedom, the flexibility to spend time with the important people in their life, to be able to do things in their business that are going to actually help grow their business, not just the busy work. So on that note, I'm curious if there's a big idea that has enabled you to maintain some level of that flexibility over the years as a business owner, kind of a principle or an idea that's driven that.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I actually have two. And I will start by saying this is something that I'm still working on too. I'm no expert on that. I think it's just kind of comes with it when you run a business. I mean, we're so passionate about what we do, so it's kind of natural for us to be thinking about it all the time. But it is really important to find that balance. So 2 things. The first one, and everyone, Nathan did not pay me to say this, but I was so inspired by your kind of like stuff that matters approach that you shared with Britt and I years ago. Actually we had like an educational Facebook group where you came in as a guest, and you shared that approach, and it really resonated with me and still does to this day, where the takeaway kind of action that we did was listing out every single task that you do in your business. Get real nitty gritty with it. And then we went through and labeled what can be simplified, what can be automated, and what can be delegated or outsourced. And I still, that still really resonates with me to this day. And I, ever since I started outsourcing things, especially, that's been the big one for me. It's been insanely helpful. And I know that a lot of times that requires money, which is scary, or maybe you're not always in the right place for that in your business. But it took me a little bit of a mindset shift there, that it's not spending money, but rather investing in your business. And if you do your research and find resources that you trust and professionals and, whoever you're hiring, make sure it's someone that you trust and are comfortable with, then it really is an investment. So I understand, like, that was hard for me to start to do too. And there's still some areas that I haven't been able to let go of in my business, but outsourcing has been really helpful. So that's the first thing. And then the second one I would say is just kind of seems obvious, but time management techniques in general. But from a personal standpoint, I actually earlier this year was officially diagnosed with ADHD, and it's been so eye-opening. And I have like the inattentive kind, where it's harder for me to focus on things. I get distracted really easily. So I've been working on tools that help me manage that better. And the one that really helps me from a day-to-day perspective is utilizing time blocking when I'm working on my schedule. Yeah. So there's lots of different, you can use a normal calendar or whatever, but I like to use Trello actually to map out each day. And then I put time blocks. So I'll say, like, from this time to this time, I'm working on this. And just really like holding yourself to that helps stick to that schedule. And I also have a handy dandy, like one of these, like the little Pomodoro timers, where you can really be like, okay, so for 20 minutes, I'm doing this, go. And so that kind of stuff has been helpful to me too, because I love that. When you're wearing all the hats, it's so easy to be distracted by another task, or you see an email come in and you go work on that. So time management techniques are, just really helpful.
That's great. And you summed those principles, those ideas up so well. And, the cool thing about time blocking too, some people might be like, oh, that seems kind of micromanaging,
rigid.
like too rigid. Yeah. But actually, and in fact, like if you're going to put some level of structure in your day, having just basic time blocks that maybe they cover a span of a couple hours even, it creates a little bit of structure, but you can function within that structure. So it's kind of best of both worlds. So I love that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's funny because I'll actually sometimes even schedule not scheduled time. Like I'll be like, okay, for this chunk of time, I get to do whatever I want, but it's still on the schedule as time that I'm doing something specific.
That's good. And these principles, by the way, for anybody listening in, again, Kelsey summed them up so beautifully. If you imply both of these here, and it takes maybe a little bit of time to do, especially what you described earlier, Kelsey, which is listing out everything that you do in a day. It may seem tedious, and it may even be actually kind of feel tedious while you're doing it. But on the flip side of doing that work, that level of awareness that you develop, and then the effort to automate or to simplify, to automate, and then delegate, as you said, will just pay off in massive, massive dividends. So again, incredible recommendations. By the way, for those of you live streaming with us, don't be shy, say hello. Sharonda saying hello from Dallas. Thanks, Sharonda, for saying hello and joining the conversation today. And don't be shy, ask questions, comment along the way in your experience in this discussion. And Kelsey, on that note, I want to kind of transition to the next question around brand position. And you are in the process of a kind of a refresh of your brand, and you're more than welcome to kind of comment on that. But I'm going to pull up your website here really quickly, and we'll do this, if I push the right buttons, do the right things. And I've got your Instagram actually first, so we'll go ahead and mention that. I've been popping it up on screen, but Launch Your Daydream, just like it sounds, no spaces on Instagram. Of course, we'll link to that in the show notes at bokehpodcast.com. And then back to your site, launchyourdaydream.com. Again, just like it sounds. And the brand position statement there at the top says strategy first, Showit websites for badass photographers who are breaking the mold. And yet again, I hit the wrong button. You can tell. Okay, there we go. I have these little keyboard shortcuts set up. I have this whole control panel here in front of me. Every once in a while, I hit the wrong keyboard shortcut. So I think we're good to go. But about that position statement, badass photographers are breaking the mold. What does that mean on like a very tangible level for those listening in, those that might be curious about your website design brand? And how does that ultimately differentiate you from some of the other website designers out there?
Great question. So I would say, breaking the mold can mean so many things, especially when we're talking about a creative industry like photography. But for me personally, this rebrand has actually been a very personal journey. And so it aligns a lot with just kind of where I'm at in life, and I'm trying to connect with other people who are just really being true to themselves, I guess. So I will hold back from all of my personal stuff, but I have kind of been on a self-discovery journey in the last few years, just really asking myself, like, who am I as a person deep down, without the like outside societal effects, like just me as a person, who am I? And as I'm learning that I want to work with people who are asking themselves that question too, and really tapping into what makes them unique. So I think part of it is just, I've loved to start to see a lot of embracing diversity throughout photography, as I started to work with more photographers who were kind of highlighting marginalized love and non-traditional families and underrepresented bodies. Like, that's the kind of stuff that just felt real to me. I was starting to get a little bit bored, for lack of a better term, with starting to just see a lot of the same stuff over and over. So seeing like people that are just showing real life feels really good to me. And so it's almost like this beautiful little chain reaction where it's like, I am going through a personal self-discovery journey, and I am trying to embrace my true self. So I want to work with photographers who are embracing their true selves in their business, or maybe aren't, but they have a desire to and need some help doing that. And then in turn, they're also capturing and highlighting people, families, couples who are doing that themselves too. Like, just everyone just showcasing a little bit of realness, because there's a little bit too much filtering and following that I'm seeing out there. And so again, this is just a personal standpoint, and it's how I've niched my brand a little bit further. Like I said, over the years, it's gone from like, I do brand and website design for creative entrepreneurs, to now I'm like, Showit templates for photographers who are doing a very specific thing. Like, it's just getting more and more specific over the years, but that's what feels really good and aligned, right? So in a roundabout way, that's kind of what I mean by photographers who are breaking the mold, just being themselves.
Cool. And you mentioned Showit a number of times, and
yes,
you've been very straightforward about the fact that that's the platform you're using to help photographers design and launch their website. So let's talk a little bit about Showit. Huge fan, by the way. I've known Todd Watson, who's their CEO and owner, for just years and years and years now. I have so much respect for Todd and the company that they've built, and the team, the level of customer service, incredible. But obviously there are many website solutions out there. And so I'm kind of curious to hear from you what has driven your decision to use, even before we talk about your decision to use them, what differentiates Showit from some of the other options out there, especially for the photographers who are like, okay, I don't know where to start. Like, I do a Google search and there's like 68,000 different solutions. Why Showit? What's the difference?
Okay, love this question. And I have a blog post that kind of encapsulates my top 5 reasons that I love and prefer Showit, especially for photographers. I always say that Showit's not for everyone. The way that I do it is not for everyone, but the reasons that I love it really align with photographers and the types of projects that I do. So to answer your question, I would say the big one for me is the creative freedom that it allows. And that's more so from the designer's perspective. But when I work with other platforms, pretty much every other platform I've ever tried working with, it's typically a block-based platform where, if you've used maybe Squarespace or even like the WordPress Elementor plugin or one of the free ones like Wix or something, there's usually blocks, right? Where you like drag and drop a widget or like a text block or a photo into a block. And so it's very restricting in that sense because you have to fit things within this very like rigid block structure. I love Showit because it is truly drag and drop. You can truly drop anything anywhere you want to. It allows for so much creative freedom and lots of interactivity, and you can just get so much more creative and have such more like unique designs through it. So of course, and that's without coding, because yes, you can code pretty much anything anywhere, but who wants to learn how to code these days? We have tools.
Right.
We have tools like Showit that allow you to get so creative without coding. So yeah, from a designer standpoint, I love it because of the creative freedom it allows. But then there's also just so many pluses, like another big one is the mobile customization. So some people might see this and think that looks terrifying, but you design your mobile website completely separate from your desktop website. So when you use some of these other platforms, you might notice you design the website and then it just automatically is like, all right, here's what your mobile site looks like. And sometimes that's promoted as a positive thing because it saves you time and energy, right? But I think that's actually a negative thing because it doesn't allow you to customize it for mobile with mobile in mind. And these days it's so important because Google is prioritizing mobile sites when they do SEO rankings. So you want to make sure that your mobile site is user friendly and it's not just kind of squished on there. So the fact that they're completely separate and it allows for such great functionality on mobile is so important. I mean, think about how many websites you look at on your phone versus on your computer. Like it's really important. So that's a big one for me too. And you mentioned their support team, and that's one of the big ones for me as well, that really makes them stand out from other platforms because you get to actually chat with real life humans who are so friendly and like they're just actual people on the other end there. Yeah. And you get to know them over time if you use it a lot, and it feels really like warm and friendly, and it's not hard to get in contact with someone. I've used other platforms where it feels like they're trying to avoid talking to you. So yeah,
that can very much be the case, but you're absolutely right. Showit, and of course, for anybody who's been in the industry for a while, and maybe you've been to a conference or even Showit United where you've met the team from Showit, it's very much what you're describing, Kelsey, which is just that level of warmth and genuine friendliness. And it's unfortunately in this day and age, it's not very commonplace to meet a company that prioritizes that level of service and that genuine sense of concern and kindness, and they're the epitome of that. And again, major props to Todd and for him setting that environment, that tone in that company. And I know that he actively behind the scenes works on developing company culture internally, prioritizes that. And it naturally then shows in the level of service too that they're showing to the photography industry at large. So I appreciate that summary. Sharonda said, as a web designer, I haven't had an opportunity to use Showit. I only use Wix. I would love to get a photographer and try it out. And yeah, Sharonda, if you go, and I'll share my screen again here, but if you go to just showit.com or showit.co, either one, you can learn a little bit more about that Showit brand. And of course, Kelsey's going to share more here today as well. Jakivia says, greetings and salutations, Bokeh community and Kelsey. Thanks, Jakivius, for chiming in, saying hello. Previous podcast guest as well. It's good to hear from you. Let's actually, you've mentioned, I think maybe just in passing, the idea of templates. And I know Showit gives you, they've run on this kind of brand position for the longest time, that kind of ultimate in customization. Photographers like to be able to control things and customize and make it their own. And that's probably the best platform out there just for that. But then simultaneously, they offer templates, at least as a starting place. And I know that you utilize that in your business as well. Can you talk a little bit about the advantages, disadvantages of templates versus custom design, and kind of your thought process, how you approach those?
Yes, of course. And yeah, I'd like to start by saying templates can get a bad rep sometimes. And I honestly think I was part of that back in the day when I only did custom design. I would really vouch for like custom being the way to do it, you know, but I would now argue that there's a space out there for everything. And it really just depends on kind of where you're at in your business and what you're looking for and what you need, what's feasible for you. So yes, I specialize in templates now, and there's a lot of reasons I love them. And I would say, first of all, like you said, it's a starting point. So a lot of people think if I'm using a template, my site has the potential to look just like someone else's site that used the same template. But once you add in your unique brand, your unique work created by a unique human, like the template then becomes unique as well. Template is a starting point. It's just a solid foundation. It's a layout, a aesthetic direction, but then we customize it so much, especially with my service. Like there are some ways that you can just kind of plug your stuff in and call it a day, but I like to customize things a step further. So once my clients are done with me, I mean, it's completely been transformed. So I started to love templates so much because that adding that step in gives us such a quicker turnaround time, which, spoiler alert, this is part of my new rebrand, but my service is now a website in a week. And this is coming down from, it used to take 4+ weeks. It could take months. There's a lot of back and forth. But when we start with a template, it allows for a much quicker turnaround time. It also allows for peace of mind. I think so many of my clients in the past have come to me saying, I'm nervous. I'm nervous about a new website. I don't know what to expect. But when they get to choose the template that they're starting with, they get to choose the ultimate like design direction we're taking with it. That gives you some peace of mind, right? Because you kind of have an idea of what it's going to look and feel like, and then we're just going to customize it from there. And then personally for me, I also love that it has allowed me to collaborate with and highlight other designers, like people who would technically sort of be my competition, I guess. Okay. I'm now collaborating with and being like, choose from these wonderful designers' template shops, and then I'll customize it for you. So it's been a really cool, like, collaborative thing. And again, it might not be for everyone, but it's working really well for me and my clients.
I really want to kind of park for a second on the website in a week concept, because that's a really, really powerful, it could almost be its own brand position statement. If somebody landed on your site and they immediately saw that they could get a customized website done for their photography business in a week. I mean, you sold me. Like, I love the simplicity of that. And we are kind of talking about how photographers can get a website launched as quickly as possible today. So this very much fits in. Can you just walk us briefly through what that process kind of looks like from start to finish to give our listeners some context? And forgive me, I will add one caveat here, just so everybody knows, we're talking about Showit today. This isn't a sponsored episode. They're not paying us to talk about Showit. This just happens to be the platform that Kelsey is using. But yeah, walk us through what that process looks like, that week-long process, Kelsey, if you will.
Yeah, of course. So the way I do it is, of course, there's a little bit of homework up front that is not included in that week-long time frame. But when a client books with me, we select their start date and we say, this is going to be your website week. And so by that week, you have to have this homework finished. And what that means is gathering your portfolio images and filling out a questionnaire for me. So I have a questionnaire that walks through the normal stuff, like the technical stuff, the design stuff, but also dives into the client journey. So thinking a lot about stuff from the dream client's point of view. And this really helps us pull together some of the copy and the content that goes into the website. So once I have all of the images and all of the questionnaire answers, I'm ready to jump in on the website week. And so what I do is I really dedicate that week to one single client. So it's a little bit more of a one-on-one, really like exclusive sort of feeling, because I'm not juggling you and a million other people. I'm just focused on you. So yeah, I dive right in with the template and the questionnaire. And I actually do, I don't like to I'm not a copywriter, but I do actually create copy for my clients' websites based off of the questionnaire content. And it really helps us. That's why I like to say my websites are strategy first, because I really want to put the strategy behind the content that's going to help speak directly to your dream clients. So I work on that. And then, I mean, it's just your typical from there where we're going back and forth. I require my clients to be present throughout the week. We utilize Google Chat. So if I have quick questions, they can respond right to me. And then I like to send these video walkthroughs where they can leave their feedback directly in the video. So a lot of these little tools I've gathered along the way help the process move along so quickly. And then, yeah, we're typically like working on connecting the domain by Thursday or Friday that week. And then the website can be up and running and it's actually technically 5 days, not a full week. So it's Monday to Friday.
Yeah, that's really good. When you talk about strategy first, can you break down a little bit about what that means? Because I know from personal experience, as in I've done this, where I'll put a website up without a clear strategy in place, not only maybe necessarily with the brand, or maybe I've thought through the brand position, and I'm pretty clear on that. But then when it comes to strategy, especially as it relates to the client journey, the way that they move through the site, with a very clear intention on my part of what it is that I want them to do. What does that journey, what should that look like? And of course, attaching clear calls to actions through that process, making sure that I'm sharing the appropriate information, et cetera. What does that strategy process look like for you and the way that you're communicating with your client?
Okay, great question. So yeah, there's a lot of different, I would say, buckets of strategy. So I do want to talk about some of what you were bringing up with like the journey that we're guiding them through on the site, but there's also SEO. So shout out to Britt, who I mentioned before, my old business partner. I haven't let her go too far. She is now my in-house SEO expert. So every client will have SEO strategy from her. And so that's big on, that's helping you with where you're showing up on Google, how you're getting organic search traffic. When people go search for something on the internet, how are you going to show up? So that's a really important strategy that needs to be part of your website as well. So that's something that we actually kind of do behind the scenes a little bit before the week of as well. She kind of does that for me when you're working on your homework. And then I jump in and put the additional strategy on top of it, which is the kind of the content strategy. So that's a little bit more what you were talking about, where the questions that I've asked you in the questionnaire are very intentional and strategic, and it's helping me kind of work on what that journey looks like for your potential clients on the website. So resonating with their pain points and presenting the direct solution, helping them feel seen and heard and understood, and like, oh, this person really gets what I'm looking for. And then also helping communicate your value in a way that showcases what's unique about your service offering, what is special about your service offering, and really communicating that value so that by the time the potential client interacts with the pricing on your website, they don't bat an eye. They're like, oh, of course, this makes sense because I totally understand the value of this now, rather than just being like, here's my price. So kind of taking them on that journey. And yeah, like you said, there's intentional calls to action on every page. We're thinking about, if you're on this specific page, where would we want them to go next? Yeah. Making it easy for them to contact you. We don't want them to have to search for a contact form. So all that kind of stuff is the strategy that I like to highlight that I am helping with, because I worry that people see template and they think, oh, I'm just plugging stuff into a template. Like, why don't I just do that myself? It's like, no, there's a lot of strategy that I'm putting into this too, that makes it a lot more custom.
That's good. And by the way, you shouted out Britt too, and I'll pull up her site really quick, SEO4photographers.com. For anybody who's curious or is looking for a specialist in SEO, you can check that out, SEO4photographers.com. I was chatting with her briefly the other day via DM. I'm like, how in the world did you get that domain name? It's so awesome. The specificity and, of course, the clarity in the brand. So that was really, really cool. Sharonda actually chimed in from YouTube, and she said, in your onboarding, do you use Asana or Honeybook? Just Google only. I'm trying to simplify my process with my clients.
Ooh, I love that question. I use Dubsado actually for that, and I know a lot of people use HoneyBook. A lot of those are great tools, but yeah, Dubsado I've been using since. I think since we started Launch Your Daydream, we were one of the OGs, I feel, and now it's grown so much since then. But it's an amazing client management system. That's what I do my invoicing through, lead management, contracts, all of that. And there's so much more you can do with Dubsado. I feel like I kind of use the basics, but you can do like automations and workflows and stuff like that I haven't really gotten into. But yeah, it's a great platform.
Yeah, thanks for your questions, Sharonda. And anybody else who's live streaming, don't be shy. Ask questions here. We have just a few minutes left. Before we talk a little bit about your process, how listeners can get in touch with you and get started with you if they're looking for somebody to help them put a website together, will you share just a little bit about what photographers should be thinking through previous to that? Maybe I know you're going to kind of handhold them through that process, but maybe they'd be a step ahead if they are thinking through certain, whether it's the value proposition, like you were describing earlier, or other elements of what makes an effective website. Are there certain ideas, principles that they should be thinking through for themselves or establish for themselves before they come to you for a more, I guess, successful experience all around?
Ooh, okay. Yeah, I think I do help with a lot of the strategy when it comes to kind of getting in your client's shoes and stuff. But I would say the big thing for me is trying your best to niche down a little bit. If you're one of those photographers who, is like, I do families and weddings and newborns and just all of it. My biggest advice is to try to narrow that down. And it's a process. Like I said, I wasn't very niche down when I first started. And over the years, I started to find what works for me over time. So I understand if you're just starting out, maybe you need to try things out to really figure out what is your sweet spot. But it's just a lot easier to resonate with your dream clients when you're clear on who that is. And if someone who's getting married goes to your website and they're seeing babies and high school seniors as well as weddings, it feels like, oh, well, they're not really catering to me. They do a lot of different stuff. So the niching down process, it can be scary, but it's really, really helpful when it comes to your strategy. And if you come to me kind of having an idea of where your niche is, even if it's just like weddings, that's a lot easier for us to work with than like weddings and families and babies. And with that being said, I have plenty of clients who still do that, and it's fine. But sure, it allows for so much better, like juicy, good strategy when we can get really specific with it. That's it. And then take it a layer further. Like, okay, you're a wedding photographer, but what types of weddings? What types of clients? What, like how I'm getting more specific now with like photographers who are breaking the mold, like that kind of thing. It helps you really, really, really get specific with speaking to them. And then I know it's scary to feel like, wait, but then I'm pushing away all of these other people. And it's like, kind of, yeah, but also that means you're welcoming in more of those people who are aligned with you that maybe before wouldn't have thought twice because you weren't speaking to them. So it's scary. I've been there, but yeah, niching down, I would say, is the first strategy step that I would recommend before. And then when you come to me, I can help you get really specific with it and figure out how are we talking to that niche and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's kind of a chicken or the egg situation, right? Like if you choose the specific value prop that you're going to offer, the example that I always give in conversations around brand position is black and white wedding photography for Chattanooga couples, if I was using my local market as an example. If you pick that, then you also know the market that you're talking to. Or if you're thinking about a particular market up front, that enables you to more effectively decide on that very unique value proposition. Kind of goes hand in hand. But that specificity really does, you said it makes strategizing a lot easier for sure. It also makes marketing a lot easier, especially if you're going to spend any money on advertising. If you've got 3 or 4 different genres that you're juggling, and then you're trying to create some kind of specific recognition. I mean, this is where this phrase brand position in part comes in. Like, you want your brand to have a particular position in the mind of a potential client. When they think about your brand, they're like, oh, that's Nathan. He photographs black and white weddings. I've never seen anything like it before. He only shoots in black and white. It's so cool. I don't know if it's for me, but you've got to check it out. Or that's
Yeah.
exactly what I want because I want something unique. But there's that position that you're able to more easily hold in the mind of a client or potential client if you are specific. If you don't get that specific, then the marketing process becomes a little bit more complicated. So I like that you highlight the importance of that. I think it's really great for all of our listeners to keep in mind. Maybe just here in closing, and to reiterate here, Kelsey also didn't ask me to do this, but Kelsey, just I love what you're doing here, and I'd love for you to share briefly how our listeners get started with your service if they're interested. What does that process look like?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, so I mean, typically you can just reach out on my website, launchyourdaydream.com. Like we've talked about, I'm working on this rebrand that's launching next Monday, a week from today, but you can still access the current site and fill out the contact form there on the contact page. And I've also started offering VIP days too for people who already have a website that they're happy with and love, but maybe need to make some updates or some changes. They've been really fun we just like knock out a to-do list in one sitting, and it's really fun. So yeah, I have the whole shebang of the Showit template customization that we've been talking about, website in a week. But then I also do VIP days for smaller asks. And yeah, you can find me on my website or Instagram at Launch Your Daydream.
Perfect. Yeah, and I've been popping this up throughout the show today, but once again, launchyourdaydream.com, and then Launch Your Daydream, again, just like it sounds, all one word, on Instagram. We'll link to both in the show notes at bokehpodcast.com. Kelsey, thank you so much for doing the show today. Thanks for sharing your insight and, of course, what you're doing with your brand. We'll make sure to put all of the important kind of talking points and links in the show notes at bokehpodcast.com. Thanks once again.
Thank you.